And now I'm pleased to turn over our webinar to Joy Shegstad.
Hi, everybody. We're going to talk for about an hour about, there we go, fundraising. It's a topic that many people in ministry are interested in. We're always looking for new resources. And I'm going to talk about a number of different ways to raise funds today, but underneath all that would be being able to really make a case for the ministry that you're seeking funding for. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that. Just going to touch lightly on several different ways. And if you're going to seek funding outside of your church congregation, which is what I'm going to talk about today, typically the funding would go towards something that's a benefit to the broader community. Let's say most outside funders are interested in that. There'd be some exceptions. Like, for example, if you're going to submit a grant proposal to your denomination, you could certainly seek funding for core ministry programs of your church. This is what Linda just read. And I'll show you my 3 books. This is the one with Judson Press, so 7 Creative Models for Community Ministry. This came out in 2013. So the 7 models are listed on the front, and it's for churches that want to get more connected to their community, and it's really a step-by-step book. And then my other 2 are at Roman and Littlefield now. They're Alban Institute books. So the first one was Starting a Nonprofit at Your Church. So if you're interested in starting a separate 501c3 connected to your church, that'd be the book for you. Churches typically do that in order to, part of the reason they do it is to attract some outside funding resources that maybe couldn't go directly to a church. And then Winning Grants to Strengthen Your Ministry is related to our topic today, so that's really step-by-step all about how to prepare funding proposals for foundations and corporations. So I'm going to talk for a few minutes about tips and trends in fundraising. So I did some research on what's current now, and these are the kinds of things that I talk to my clients about all the time. And I will say too that I'm a consultant and a trainer, so you could contact me at the email at the head of the PowerPoint here if you're interested in that. In fundraising, I would typically write grant templates, do some prospect research and coaching. I also do fundraising plans, so really looking at what you're doing and helping you kind of pull it all together in a way that would be interesting to a funder and appealing to them. So one great thing is that philanthropic giving is up, and this is the case really across all the sectors. So I looked at individuals, I looked at foundation and corporate giving, and so it's up, and it's even above what it was pre-recession. Another really critical thing is to be able to tell your story. So I think this is particularly true for more young adult and middle-aged people. They're expecting you to tell their story about your impact, tell your story about how volunteers are engaged in your organization or ministry, really talking kind of about the formation of your group. Sometimes that's a really interesting story, how people pull together to do something pretty amazing through your church and in the community. So I hear that when I go around a lot now, is like we're going to have a time of sitting together and actually telling our stories. So you tell your personal story, and then you kind of put your organization or your ministry in that format too. Another important trend is to tell your story visually. So I wanted to show you an infographic, and this, I don't know, it's been in play for a few years now, so I can't say that it's brand new, but people are getting more accustomed to seeing really little bites of written information put together with some graphics that would really kind of send home the point that you're trying to make. And so I'm on a foundation board, and we work on early childhood education a lot. We're putting together a series of infographics for, we're seeking public funding for home visiting, and really putting together pictures on the impact that that has on kids long term and the number of kids in need. So maybe you'd use an infographic like this one that has people, and it kind of shows the percentages and numbers of thousands of kids in this case who really need this service. So think about that. And I would, if this is new to you, I just put infographic maybe on the kind of program that you're going to pull together, write something about, and Google it and just see what comes up. You'll get some good examples. Another trend in fundraising is that younger people want to volunteer. So often that's how they become donors to organizations. So it might seem odd to them if you approach them first to give money. They'd really want to be in with you first and really learn the organization, and then they'll, many of them become faithful donors after that. So I'm saying like people under 40, like post high school up to age 35 maybe. And like I said, often volunteers will convert to donors. So I mean, if you've got if you say at your church, you've got a youth development program that serves the whole community, and you've got all kinds of people from your church and from outside your church volunteering for it, I would look at those people as potential donors. And I have some thoughts on engaging millennials. Sometimes I get tired of having a conversation about engaging millennials. Sometimes it seems like all we talk about in the church, and there's other generations too, but I think they have such a totally different way of approaching life and getting information and making decisions about what to get involved in. It's worth maybe putting a few slides in here. So, obviously they're really tied to technology, so you're going to need to have it's probably even more of a social media presence than a website. I would say millennials use social media more, so make sure that you're even if you can only do one of the social media sites, make sure you're posting there regularly. And like I said, younger people like to come through volunteering, so I have like an open door to the church here. I think actually that's a way to attract many millennials into relationship with people in the congregation, is to offer them volunteer opportunities, to invite them in. And this is an important one, this micro opportunities. So this means to kind of break apart into small pieces, opportunities to give financially and to volunteer. So you might say, we need people to show up on Tuesday and unpack all the food out of the truck for our Christmas baskets. And that goes up on the social media site, or you create an event around that, and then they might come. I think it's also true for giving, financial giving. So to really not just say, we're raising money for our annual fund and we want you to give $200, might be that you break that into some specific program-related opportunities and you ask like 6 or 8 times a year, and maybe they would give every single time. Because it's being able to put your mind around like how the money is being used, I guess, is a critical piece of this. And then really being able to demonstrate impact. I think that's become more and more important to donors. So foundations and corporations are interested in that, as well as individual donors. So in this case, the impact is that the kids graduated. So it looks like a high school graduation to me. So it's that outcomes issue again. I talked about that quite a bit in the webinar a couple weeks ago. It's what changes in the world because of our work in as concrete terms as you can describe it. So you can say people, homeless people, secured stable housing, and employment are on the path to self-sufficiency. Students are improving their grade level in their reading skills, for example, or in their math skills. That's what I'm talking about in terms of concrete impact. And then this is another important one. More and more donors are becoming cause and content oriented, not institutional. So just running that annual fund campaign like you've done for decades isn't going to work for younger donors, and I'd say even middle-aged donors. So by this I mean your whole campaign or your whole discussion with them about giving would be focused on the program. So in this case it looks like maybe an after-school homework help program with some volunteers or staff who are young adults. So you'd be asking people to give to that. So you wouldn't say we want you to underwrite our overhead and all of our salaries. You'd target it more specifically. So what I'm going to advise you to do is to develop a broad funding base. So there's lots of different kinds of funding that you would seek. And if you're a small church or a small nonprofit, Running at all of them maybe isn't practical for you, but just know that you're in a better position as an organization. You're more financially stable if you've got all different kinds of gifts and actually sizes of gifts. So gifts from individual donors are often the best kind because individual donors are flexible and they'll give over a period of time and might give more than once a year. Fundraising events, banquets, golf tournaments, concerts. I've seen some real fun ones too. Well, plant sales, things like that. In-kind donations, so if you can get items donated, books, curriculum, food, that can be as good as cash for you. A lot of nonprofits and churches are turning towards earned income, so these are fees from selling products and services. An example would be if you own housing and you're renting it out, rent would be considered an earned income. Church partnerships, so you might seek funding from other churches. And then, like I said, it would be good to pursue gifts of many sizes. So what we all want in fundraising, I think, is to get maybe one or two really huge gifts at the beginning of the year, and then we don't have to think about fundraising for like almost the whole year, right? The opposite is actually better for our organization. So I would rather have 10 $1,000 gifts than one $10,000 gift. Because if that $10,000 donor changes their mind or starts giving somewhere else instead of to us, that puts us in a really bad position. So you're better able to weather funding changes if you have kind of this broad mix of kinds of donors and then also sizes of gifts. So my clients that I was working with before the recession started, pre-2008, the ones that weathered it the best had that diversity among their funding sources and then the size of gifts. So I'll talk just briefly about special events. I think often churches are in a really good position to host special events because you kind of have a captive audience with your congregation. And you know, in communities a lot of times, especially in rural communities, the church is often the hub for special events, so people might expect to be invited to something at the church. And I live in the city. Even here, I think certain times of the year, especially, people turn towards the church for special meals. You know, like here we have lutefisk suppers, etc. I don't know if you have that in your area, or Scandinavian festivals or multicultural Christmas festivals. You know, would be an example. So I think an upside is special events can help you enhance visibility, and it's an opportunity to tell new people about your church or your organization. And you can raise a lot of money this way. I think the downside is it can consume vast amounts of time, a lot of staff time, for example. And I think it's easy to plan an event. The hard work is to sell tickets and to actually get people to turn out. So people always say, oh, that was easy to plan, and I said, well, that's not the hard part. You can put together a pretty good program or dinner, but did you get people there to attend? So some tips for you. One would be to keep fixed costs low. So you don't want to, you want to increase costs based on how many people attend. So a meal would be an example of that. If you were bringing in some major talent for a concert or something, you have to pay that person regardless of how many people show up. So think about your fixed costs. Get sponsors to cover your costs. This is what I've been successful doing over the years with fundraising events. So ran a golf tournament once, and we had people on the board who owned a chain of grocery stores, and they gave a chunk of money to really underwrite our costs, so we could tell people participating in the golf tournament that all of the money they gave us were going to support the kids. In this case, we were running an after-school program. And then I think this is the most important one, to build a strong sales force. So if you can't identify a pretty good sized group of people who you really believe can sell tickets and turn out people to the event, I probably wouldn't do the event. So these are people that maybe have experience doing this before. I've had a lot of luck with business owners in the past doing this kind of work because they have vendors and maybe a lot of other connections in the community, and that they'd be in a good position to get people to turn out. And then to recruit volunteers to manage the event, because this can be be a real bear for staff people. So I would get a group of volunteers who are going to take care of the meal and the setup and the teardown and working on marketing and publicity, for example. And then I'll just talk a little bit about grant applications too. This is kind of a big topic, and I do teach separate webinars on this, or you could buy the book that I've written, Winning Grants, to get really detailed information. So, kinds of grants. Well, I'll talk about the common grant applications. So in many geographic areas, all the funders will have one application that they all agree to use. So it might be in a single state or a metro area. So like Chicago has their own, I think it's called the Donors Forum. I think New York City area has their own, it's like a trade association for funders. So if you go to givingforum.org, you could, I think, find your state association of funders and check with them about a common grant application in use in your area. So this will help you write your proposal. And another kind of random piece of advice, I think it's really important to know your church members. So before you write grants, I think it'd be important to know who's connected to local corporations, government entities, family foundations. Maybe there are individuals or families in your community that have their own foundations. Some of the people in your church may know them, or community grant opportunities. So sometimes I've had several church jobs now and a number of clients where we just said to the congregation, we're looking for funding for this. Let us know where you work or if you have some other kind of connections that would be helpful to us. So this is what I'd recommend. This is what's often in a grant proposal, just so you're aware of it. You get your common grant app. But describe your organization, so you need to talk about the history of what you've been doing. In the case of a church, I'd maybe talk about your history with that program area that you're seeking funding for, whether that's healthcare or affordable housing, for example. Just talk about what you've been able to do and describe what you've been doing on a trajectory. So we built the organization, we started small, we were able to add these pieces. Over time we've grown from just having one site to 5 sites, and this is how that happened. And in the future we're looking forward to this. And then have a brief overview of your programs. That'll need to be in the your grant proposal as well. So you might have like bullet points that have like I don't know, 2 or 3 sentences in this section. And I would put, and if you're raising funding for something that you're doing in the community, I would put sort of all the things that you're doing in the community. Sometimes churches and nonprofits do things that are kind of more informal too. So people who work with children or youth often have a family component that they just don't even think about. So make sure it's all represented in your overview of programs. You need to ask for a specific amount of money. I've been trying to work on my telepathy skills with funders, and I've just not been having a whole lot of luck with that. So the way you figure out how much to ask for would be to do some research on the funder. Sometimes on their website they'll have a list of who they've given to before with the amounts. Another option for you would be to use GuideStar, and you can use that for free and look up what's called the Form 990s. So every charity has to file what amounts to an income tax form, and they need to describe what they've given money to and in what amounts. So try to get in that ballpark. Look for things that are like what you're proposing to do, and then you don't want to ask a $25,000 donor for $5,000, and the reverse is also true. You also need to document community needs. So sometimes there are groups that have already done a community needs assessment, so you don't have to do your own. That's a major undertaking. So here I work in the Twin Cities with some churches that are working on health disparities and health issues. So a lot of times the hospitals or the large health nonprofits, health providers have already done community needs assessments, and we can access those and maybe just fill in the gaps a little bit by having some conversations in the immediate community near where the church is located. You also need a very descriptive program description that kind of has all of the elements of your program. So if you're going to write a program proposal and it's like 7 pages long total, probably 3 or 4 of the pages need to be a description of your program. doesn't need to be, you probably need to do a shorter piece on your community needs or on the history of your organization. Just make sure that you're describing the program in enough detail so people ought to be able to see what it is that you're doing by reading your program description. So who's there, what in specific terms as possible are you doing, who's running it, what are the activities, when is it, where is it, and what's the significance of your location. A lot of churches are ideally located to offer programming. They're in the neighborhood. So talk about sort of who's around the building and who's in the neighborhood. So just make sure that you're offering as much detail as you can on this part. And then you'll need to write up a section on collaborative partners. I like this image because it's like we're all in the boat together and we're rowing at the same time so that we can move forward. So I would say usually this section is like, in my experience, so this is going to depend on who you're applying to. If they ask for a whole bunch of detail on this, it might be longer, but maybe half a page. So you'd list each partner and maybe put in a sentence of how it is that you're working with them. And then I think this is maybe the most important part of your proposal. This would be that evaluation piece again, outcomes and how you're going to measure them. So again, this is what's the concrete impact, and are we going to measure this through observation, focus groups, surveys? Sometimes if you're working on skills-based programs, you just have before and after tests, ability to complete a project. So make sure you've got a section in your proposal about how you'll know you succeeded and how you're going to measure that. Also a section on the qualifications of key staff members, and if you don't have staff members, you could put in 2 or 3 critical volunteers, people who are like staff in their duties. Then also we've got special events, grants, and I'll talk a little bit about individual donors. And I think, for churches, you could ask inside your congregation for special gifts towards some of your community initiatives. I'm not going to talk about stewardship campaigns or pledging to actually support the church budget. I will say, though, if you've not done that in a formal way, if you do a stewardship campaign, it will almost certainly increase the amount of money that you bring in just because of the structure and that you are asking people in a specific and organized way. So I would recommend that if you're not already doing that, and to look for some resources maybe with your denomination for that. I think I love doing individual donor campaigns because one of the awesome things is that you can ask them for money more than once a year. They're often going to give you money over the long term. They might even give you money after they die if they've set it up that you're in their will. You can cultivate the relationship to ask for larger gifts. And for people in ministry, we're good at the relationship piece. I mean, people are afraid of fundraising, but I say to pastors, for example, theoretically you're supposed to be good at relationships and really want to get to know people better, and that's what fundraising from individual donors is. Really get to know what their heartbeat is and what they're interested, what they're passionate about. Also, the other thing about individual donors is they might be able to connect you to some of their friends or colleagues who could become individual donors for you. I think a downside of this is it can take a lot of time. So when I talk to people who are doing startups or just kind of getting started out with their ministry or nonprofit, often there'll be grant funding or a large gift from somewhere to get you going. And that buys you time to build up your individual donor side of things. And I do think making sure that you're working on that every year is important. I would start with the people in your church. Sometimes it's been controversial in my church jobs because people say, hey, we hired you to get money outside the church, but I think if you're in a church-based ministry, people in your church ought to be the first supporters in, and that helps you leverage money outside of the church. Yeah, so like I said, it's leverage for asking outsiders to come in. It's like a kind of a crowbar, and you can peel up other donations. So these are reasons why individuals give to something. They really like to have a connection to someone who is involved. So that's why it's worth maybe asking your church members what they're involved in, where they work, who they're connected to. People might give because of a historic connection to your church, so that's where people outside your congregation may be willing to give to your church. Maybe their family was connected, if you're a congregation that's been around for a while, or they used to attend and they moved away, but they have fond memories of their days at your church. And I would separate smaller donors from major donors. Um, so this would be a way to think about it. You don't want to just send a mass mailing to people that are giving you whatever is major for you. You don't want to send a mass mailing to somebody who's giving you $1,000 a year. That's going to be more personalized. So for smaller donors, I would approach through sending a mailing or through a special event. And smaller donors, you could do a more general appeal, maybe mail a few times a year. That'd be an option for you. And I think with major donors, it's more personalized. So you're gonna, so I have clients and I say, pick out your top 10 donors in terms of the amount that they give, and figure out how you're going to stay in touch with them and how they like to stay in touch. So do they want to have lunch? Should they just want you to call them on the phone periodically? I have a client right now who has somebody who kind of wants an email update every 2 weeks, and he's a very major donor, by far the largest. So for her to stay in touch is important, and to spend a little bit of time on it is worth it for that organization, I think. So usually when you're going to make an ask of a major donor, you'd have a face-to-face meeting, you tailor the proposal more. And like I said, the definition of major can vary. So for your organization, maybe it's $250 or $500. For other groups, it might be some thousands of dollars, depending on how many donors you have and what they tend to give. So here's the steps in the process of cultivating a major donor. So things that you'll need would be a person to connect you to the potential donor. I think that's pretty essential. Doing cold calls, you could do that. You're going to have a lot more success if you've got a connector. I would put together a one-page concise statement of your work together with a one-page budget, and then you'll need someone who is willing to go on the visit and actually ask for the money. And arrange that ahead of time, because if you haven't, the ask may not actually happen, in my experience. So like I said, approach through someone that you know. So you might ask your church members, you might ask donors that give to you already, like who else do you think would be interested in our work? Or if you've got certain individuals that you want to connect with, you might float those names around and just see if anybody has a connection to them. And then learn about the donor's interests. So to be able to go to a meeting and be able to say, I see that you're very interested in research of this type, research into making more productive crops around the world so that people can be fed. I went to meet with a donor about that once. The fact that I'd done a little bit of research impressed them. We actually had a conversation about it. So learn about the fine points of what they support. You might put their name in Google and just see, what kinds of nonprofits pop up and where they're making their financial gifts now. And then you'll want to arrange a meeting with the donors. So it's through someone who knows them. Find out where the donor would want to meet. So maybe it's at their office, maybe it's at a restaurant that they like, maybe it's at their home. And I think if they're willing to come out to your place and observe some programming, that's the best scenario. So schedule that at a time when there's something to observe. But if they're too busy to do that, I would figure out where it is that they're comfortable meeting, and then at a time that is convenient for them. So I've done breakfast, lunch, dinner, and evening meetings, weekend meetings with donors. Just find out when they're free. Now when you sit down to talk with them, make sure that you're doing a lot of listening, probably more listening than talking. If you get nervous when you're going to do fundraising, you might yammer on and on. I like to do this in pairs when I'm working on fundraising. So maybe you have a person with you who's going to pinch you a little bit if you're yammering on and on. Make sure you're asking questions. So like, what are they interested in? And sometimes I've gone to meet with, I love art. So if I go into somebody's office and it's full of art, I'm going to look at all of it and ask them questions about where they got it, why they're interested in it. So ask a lot of questions of them. Ask about what they're passionate about. What do they like to give to. If money were no object, what would you like to see happen in the world? And what is your charitable dream is another question that people ask, really get them visioning. So I think with individual, I'm going to talk a little bit about putting together a case statement now to round this out. With individual donors, sometimes you might have a meeting and realize there's really not a fit, which is also good information to have. So then you're not pursuing somebody for a long period of time, and that after a lot of times as an investor you realize, oh, I guess maybe they're not a good prospect for us after all. So grants, special events, individual donors, and then I think underlying all of this would be able to make an effective case for your work. So I talked about being able to put like a one-page or two-page description of your ministry or program together, and it's a fantastic exercise. So this is what I'm talking about, is be able to really boil it down into a short document so people can clearly see what it is that you're doing. So when you make the case for your work, I would say to focus on results. So again, that's those concrete impacts. So working with a group right now that's doing seed funding and coaching to start up little nonprofits that have an impact on the community. They've worked with 11 organizations so far, and we figured out those 11 organizations are impacting over 12,000 people. So that's a result in many different ways in the community, but that's a pretty broad reach for the funds that they invested. So what is it that you're doing? So making the case, people are going to want to understand, what the heck is it? So when I've talked to major donors, they do get frustrated with ministries and nonprofits. They're like, just tell me what it is you're doing. Tell me what it is. Tell me why it matters, and tell me what you want me to do. So it's those three things that really rise to the top for donors. So the what is pretty important. And then also those needs that you're addressing. So if you're doing a short document, I'd pull out a couple of factoids. So I'd for one of the communities that I worked in, our particular area of the city had one of the highest teen pregnancy rates in the nation. So that was an important factoid for us to demonstrate, because we were working on youth development, and we were doing specialized work with girls in particular. Making the case for your work is to talk about your partners again. So this is important because I think donors really want to see that you're not reinventing the wheel. They want to see that you are aware of what else is happening in your community, and you've been selective about who could really help you deliver what you're trying to do, who would be an effective partner for you. So you might have partners that are providing a piece of what your participants need. So a lot of times in affordable housing, I'll see churches and ministries provide the housing part, but then they've got a partner that's working with them on job training and placement for the customers of the program. So that'd be an example of a partner. And here's the one-pager. So this is what I talked about. What is it that you're trying to do? Here's the outcomes, a concise statement of the impact you hope to have. So I'm working with this nonprofit right now, and they are helping design and distribute an exoskeleton for kids who have no or minimal use of their arms because they have neuromuscular diseases. So being able to write like this impact statement, just saying kids can, this brings them out of isolation and into relationship with other kids because they can play, they have a measure of independence, they can feed themselves, they can hug their loved ones. So it's really life-changing. So it's to be able to make this affordable or free to children who have these diseases. You want a short budget. How much does it cost? And then you've got to have that ask in there. So that's true of grant proposals. true with individual donors. What is it that you would like the donor to do? So giving packages would be, it's like those micro opportunities that I talked about in the beginning. Be breaking apart your program into kind of discrete opportunities for people to give to. So camp scholarships is a real obvious one there. I've raised money for those a lot over the years. Worked with health clinics, so we'd had people underwriting a visit, costs as much to visit, or to do certain kinds of medical tests. We kind of broke that down into costs. And for the exoskeleton group that I just talked about, you know, their biggest giving opportunity would be to fit one child with this medical device, but they have some others as well. So here's some examples. Would be to underwrite a staff position, providing college scholarships for 5 students, underwrite the launch of our tutoring program. So that'd probably be a bigger ticket item. And the key is to have giving packages at all different levels. So figure out sort of maybe what the lower end or little stretch number would be for people in, that you'd be approaching. And then don't be afraid to put some kind of really big ones in there. I've been able to snare some major donors that I didn't even really know just by having some of the larger opportunities on the lists. And then you actually have to ask people to do something, so that's got to be in the 1 page or 2. What is it that I want you to do? So when you ask, you've got to ask for a specific amount, and it's amount based on your research. Like I said, you're looking at the donor or funder's websites, and based on the donor's interests. So what kind of program do you think they'd be interested in, what kind of client or population, or a geographic area. So now I do some work on the east side of St. Paul, and people say once you're from the east side, you're always from the east side. So I've run into a lot of people over the years who are interested in the east side because that's where they got their start. A lot of immigrant groups have started there, and people come up through high school, they go away to college, and maybe they're living somewhere else, but they still love the east side. So we'll give to things there. And then being able to wait. So once you make your ask, if you're with an individual donor, being able to sit and wait to see what they say. This is a sales technique as well. Don't fill the void or the pause with your words, but wait to see what the donor will say. So often I would have a piece of paper that would have a range of giving opportunities, and I might point to one and say, we know of your interest in this kind of program, and I just wonder if you might consider underwriting half of the staff position that we need to grow this part of our effort. And then wait, see what they say. They might say, I got to think about it. I want this additional information from you. You might say, yeah, I think I could do that. Or they might say, oh, I'm really actually more interested in this part of your program and I'm giving towards this. So wait to see what they say. And then following up with individual donors, I think, is critical. So ask them when you can reconnect, and then follow through and ask for another meeting. You've got to send the information they request. If you don't, it just shows that you're disorganized. I've also seen donors read that as a sign that you're not really passionate about your work if you're not going to follow through. So you might have a number of meetings. Just continue to follow up, keep talking. You might have to repeat this sequence as needed. Like I said, several tries are often needed. This ship is named Try Again. I like that. I think you're looking to build relationships over the long term. So like I said before, stay in touch with your donors. So your major donors meeting for coffee to update, inviting them to events and for program visits. Asking them for advice or assistance is a great way to keep people engaged as well. And actually I've heard people say if you want advice, ask for money. If you want money, ask for advice. And keep them updated on outcomes and progress. So if you've got a number of donors over a certain amount, you might want to actually do a monthly update just for them and email it out to them. Just to keep them in the loop. And especially if you're starting something new, and it's always a little bit of a bumpy road, that things change, you're not sure what's going to happen, but if the donor is really in the mix with you, it could actually be more motivating for them than less. So that's the end of my formal part of my presentation. I'm thinking about this wasn't really on marketing or communications per se, but emphasizing having a social media presence around both your volunteering and making those asks or presenting giving opportunities, I really think is pretty critical in this day and age, more so than a website, I think. You know, if you had to pick one, I would say go the social media route and figure out ways to drive people to your Facebook page, for example. So anyway, open for questions.
Okay, Joy. I'm looking to see if anyone has their hand raised. If you have a question, there is a box to the right-hand side of your screen where there will be a hand that you could click on or a question icon that you can click on. And I do have a question from Kay. Oh, okay. She's saying, can you leave your slides up longer? She was trying to write things down. Kay, we will be sharing the PowerPoint and Joy's notes in a follow-up email after the presentation, so you don't have to worry about taking notes on that. And then if you have any additional questions with regard to content, Joy provided her email address on a slide at the beginning of the PowerPoint that you'll be able to reach out to her directly. All right, here's another hand raised. I'm going to open up your phone line. I believe Mizael. Hi, Mizael.
Yes.
How are you? What is your
Good.
question
How are you?
for Joy?
So I had a question. What funding percentage should an organization expect when it comes to grants, corporate sponsors, and individual donors?
Starting out, you know, and I know you, so I know you're kind of just starting. Grants would probably be a larger percentage, so it might be more than half. And then as organizations kind of ramp up over a period of time, they'd look to have more individual donors in the mix. That could be different if you've got like some major individual donors in the mix with you at the beginning, kind of underwriting some of the startup. But yeah, often that's the case. Or there may be, if you've got a church partner that's willing to kind of give a chunk of money to get you going. So anyway, that's what I think. So the nonprofits I work with, we're often saying we've been around now for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. You know, our percentage of funding from grants is still up over 50%. We need to try and build the individual donor base. So.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, I don't see any other hands raised. So at this time, I'd like to thank Joy for facilitating, and I'd like to thank all of you for being with us. I encourage you to learn more about 7 creative models for community ministry, and the book can be found on the Judson Press website at judsonpress.com. If you place an order online, you can receive 20% off of the price. And I'd also like to invite you to join us for Joy's upcoming webinars. She has one on January 21st, Congregations Working Together, Finding the Dream and Living It. And she has one on February 4th, Out of the Pew into the Community, Getting Church Members Engaged in Community Ministry. So two very interesting webinars coming up. You can sign up for those by going to judsonpress.com website, and there's a section on the right called News and Notes, or I'm going to include links to the webinar registration page in the follow-up email that I'll send out to everyone with Joy's PowerPoint. So again, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Do email me if you have questions or if you're interested in talking about some consulting.
Okay. Um, Thank you all. We really appreciate you dialing in and enjoy the rest of your day.